Hello, this is David White from Sportsman's Emporium. And the last couple of videos we talked about the casting, the forward cast, and then we did a roll casting one. Well, really, the next most important thing, and probably the most important thing overall, that you need to know in order to go out and catch fish is how to work your fly, especially if you're warm water fly fishing. If you're trout fishing and you're nymph fishing, you're trying to use the current and you're really not trying to move your fly at all. You're just trying to dead drift it with the current. In fact, you're trying to not give that fly any resistance whatsoever so it flows naturally with the drift of the current. Well, if you're fishing a pond or a lake, or for a species like bluegill or bass, it's going to be a lot different the way, because there's no current and you're using a different type of fly. You need to give your fly some action and liven it up to be attracted to the fish. So basically, that's really easy to do, and I'm going to show you a little bit with the line control hand on what you do. I have a little fly on there now, and I just casted it out there, and I got 2 fingers over my line. So my fly's in the water and it's sitting there perfectly still. Now I need to do something to it to get it back to me and also work the fish. Well, if you're spin fishing, everybody knows that if you kind of jig up and down on your rod, or you're real slow and then a couple pops here and there, it makes your lure act more erratically. You want to do the same thing with the fly rod. It's just instead of reeling with your reel, you strip with your line. So you keep your finger, at least one finger over your line, and you just strip your line in, and that moves the fly out in the water back towards you. So I can do long strip real fast, or I can do some short pop strips. I can do a slow, steady strip. It doesn't matter. You find what works for that particular day on those fish. But in general, that's what you want to do, is get your line out there, get your fly out where the fish are, and give it a little bit of movement. Like I say, I got my line control here, and that's key. And not only is that key to controlling my fishing and that fly, but if I were to get a bite from a fish and I didn't have this, what would happen is I would lift up to set the hook, and there would be all this slack line, and the hook wouldn't actually penetrate. So it's really important that you strip your line through your finger and continue to lock down on it. That way, if I do get a fish bite, when I lift my rod up, there's no slack in it, and it actually sets the hook. So that's really what you want to do. You want to practice different strokes and different sizes of your pull. Short, sometimes it's the short, small, quick strips that work best. Sometimes long pauses, especially if you're fishing a topwater fly. A lot of times you want to put like a long pause in between your strips. Sometimes you don't, but you have to experiment with those things in the water. That's how you become a better fisherman. You experiment at different places and different times of year, different cloud cover and weather. Like I notice sometimes dark colors work better than light colors on particular days. I feel like every once in a while I could relate that to the cloud cover, and it's weird how that works, but certain colors work really good. Like for bass, it seems like green and yellow, white and black just work really well. For trout, it could be a little bit different. One color that seems that a lot of fish like is chartreuse. But really, once you've selected your fly, when you're fishing with a fly rod for bass, you have to work your fly. Don't be afraid to give it some erratic movement. Use it like you would your spin rod. You're not just dead drifting, you're going to be stripping your line. Give it a little pause, strip it again, another little pause, strip it again, and maybe I'll give it a longer pause this time. One thing I notice is more often than not, especially bass, hit on the pause. And that goes for if I'm fishing on the top or underneath. I'll be fishing crayfish patterns in lakes over top of boulder piles, and I'll just kind of bounce them up and down. And a lot of times it's the down where my rod just goes and the fish is on. So, just keep your line control hand. This is the most important thing for you to actually catch fish. You could be a really bad fly caster, but as long as you're good enough at casting to get your fly out in the water, if you know how to work your fly once it's out there, you can catch fish for years while you're practicing and refining your fly cast. You don't have to be a great fly caster to have success at fly fishing. One cool thing about fly fishing, if you haven't gathered by now with all these videos, is that you're always doing something. Never are you just sitting in a lawn chair waiting for your bobber to sink. That is one of the fun things about it. It's very interactive. It's a fun thing to do with your kids, with your family. So I recommend going out and trying some bass fishing, trying to work your fly a little bit. Put some of these videos to use.